Microscopic Lust. Chapter 3. Octava also didn't know what to do when Mr. Gorse begged her to forgive Helena's behavior. She didn't expect Mr. Gorse to be humble and apologetic for his daughter, maybe because Mr. Gorse loves his daughter, perhaps because he wants to marry Amanda. But what about Octava's pride? How did the girl treat her, hurt by Helena's insulting words? Helena is not that kind of girl. She is an honest and genuine girl. It is not possible to insult other people on purpose. What she did was not on purpose. I beg your pardon for my daughter. I will punish her. But please don't turn this matter into a grudge. Mr. Gorse reassured Octava until he was foaming at the mouth. It was Octava's first day setting foot in this house. And the experience she got was not so impressive. However, seeing her mother's happy face because she could be with Mr. Gorse made Octava hesitate. Being treated like that by Helena made Octava not want to stay in this house, but as an only child, she couldn't leave Amanda alone. At least Octava had to keep an eye on the girl named Helena, lest she hurt Amanda. I forgive her, sir. I was just shocked. I should have knocked on the door first. I completely forgot that one of those rooms must belong to Helena. Octava chose to make peace today. She wanted to know how evil the girl named Helena was. Mr. Gorse immediately hugged Octava happily. Oh, dear. I know you are a kind and humble girl. Thank you for giving Helena another chance. Later she will meet you and apologize personally to you. She always is. She's a nice girl, but she's just the way she is. Octavia just nodded. Amanda was waiting at the table. Let us eat. Do you eat meat? Do you like vegetables? Mr. Gorse asked Octava. Octava scratched her head. No one had ever asked her that before. I eat anything. I have no taboos. Very good. Because Helena doesn't eat meat. She only eats vegetables. I'm also learning to cut back on meat. So that you don't have high blood pressure or cholesterol. I'm old. Mr. Gorse spoke at length. Octava smiled in response to the man in front of her. She felt strange. And the girl just found out that there are chuddy guys like Gorse in this world. I want to cut back on the sweet stuff. Is it because you are already cute? Gorse asked jokingly. Do you have a lover? Octava furrowed her brow, pretending to laugh at Gorse's joke. What's the relationship between sweets and boyfriends? Yes, I already have a boyfriend, sir. Then bring him here sometime. I want to see who is the man who dares to date my future child. Okay. Octava answered hesitantly. Mr. Gorse was being too kind. And that scared Octava a bit. She was afraid that she would feel too comfortable in this house. She was worried she would start comparing her late father and Mr. Gorse. She was worried that her father's position would be replaced. One more thing, Octava. Gorse grabbed Octava's shoulder and looked at the girl thoughtfully. You can call me Dad or Papa if you're ready. I won't force you. Make yourself comfortable in this house. And don't worry too much if Helena says something weird. Of course, sir. Thank you. Gorse smiled. Have you chosen which room is yours? Octava nodded. As she walked to the dining table, she explained the room's location she wanted. Gorse agreed. Before Octava came, he had already ordered people to clean all the empty spaces in this house. If Octava has chosen, Octava has to arrange the room with her decorations and belongings. Amanda smiled when she saw Octava and Gorse chatting comfortably. How are you two getting along? Gorse's cheeks are getting red. And Octava knew the man was really in love with her mother. Dinner was leisurely. Nothing was as formal as what Octava had imagined the Gorse family to be. Mr. Gorse is still an ordinary human being even though he is rich. It seems that money and power don't make him arrogant. Indeed, people who have lived rich for a long time are different. In the middle of dinner, Octava got a text message. She checked her cell phone. The first message came from her boyfriend. She was asking about her plans for tonight. And the second message came from Miss Ursula. Octava immediately finished her meal quickly. "Sorry I was being rude, but I have to go now." Octava stood up, wiped the corners of her lips with a tissue and shifted the chair. Amanda and Gorse's eyes followed Octava's movements. "Now?" Gorse wanted to know. He looked at his watch. Yeah. The girl hadn't gotten used to speaking frankly yet. She had just met her mother's future husband. Accepting his presence was difficult enough. She didn't want to force herself. "But, Helena will be down soon." Octava stopped in her tracks, politely turned around and smiled to make Gorse feel better. "I have forgiven her, Mr. Gorse." "Calm down. This is a campus business, it can't be postponed." Gorse nodded understandingly. Also, Amanda doesn't know anything about the incident involving her daughter and Helena Gorse. Before actually leaving the dining room, Octava kissed Mr. Gorse's left cheek and hugged Amanda. Octava takes at least 15 minutes to reach the outskirts of Purasapa from the nearest bus stop. There she rechecked her phone. Ms. Ursula said that she would pick up Octava from the bus stop because her house is located on the outskirts, and there are not many public transportations that want to take passengers from there. Meanwhile, Ursula was waiting at the stop even before the bus dropped Octava. "Hello," said the lecturer when she found the student figured she had not graduated twice. "Hello, Miss Ursula," Octava answered doubtfully. She noticed Ursula's hair, which was not in its usual shape. "I have to pick you up. My house is hard to reach with a map." "This late, you will get lost, believe me." Ursula walked to her car, followed by Octava. When they got into the car and Ursula was already in the driver's seat, she realized that Octava was asking her questioningly. "My hair? Yeah, I'm not sure college will like this dreadlocks hairstyle." "Doesn't look like a teacher." Ursula ruffled the strands of dreadlocks in her hair, which were partly brown and partly pink. "I'm diligent about washing it." "You don't have to worry. My hair doesn't stink at all." Octava shook her head. "Ms. Ursula, you look cooler this way." "Really?" Octava was polite. In her heart, she was wondering how the professor's hair smelled. "Don't look at me like that, and please don't tell other students that my hairstyle is like this." Ursula smirked. Her demeanor was different from the lecturer Octava knew on campus. Miss Ursula is more welcoming and friendlier. She uses a lighter intonation. Even so, she still sounded very dignified and confident as usual. She drove her car away from the bus stop and turned into a small, dark, dimly lit street. At the Gorse house, Helena descended the stairs from her room to the dining room. She was too familiar with the house's condition so that she could walk along each side without slipping or crashing, even though her hands and eyes were still looking at the cell phone. She sat in her chair. Then, she greeted her father and future stepmother with a smile. "Auntie, Dad, I'm sorry I was rude to Octava earlier." "I was in a bad mood earlier. Is she still angry?" Helena spoke in a calm tone. Amanda looked at Gorse in bewilderment. Gorse shrugged. "Youth business." Amanda understood, and then she shook her head. "Octava just left. Campus business," she said. Helena nodded in understanding. "By bus? At this time of night?" Amanda nodded again. Helena looked directly at her father. "Father, You should have told me I could take her. Or she can borrow your car," Helena protested. "You're so kind." Amanda immediately felt flattered, her smile blooming. She watched the girl named Helena for a moment. She is only 5 years older than Octava. However, her calm demeanor and graceful demeanor made her feel envious. If only Octava didn't have such a clumsy and careless attitude. "Not all girls are as spoiled as you, Helena," her father answered. "I'm offering help, not showing off. Calm down, old man." Still, Helena's voice had no emotion even when she flirted with her father. Microscopic Lust. Chapter 4. Octava and Ursula got out of the car. They walked a few steps to the terrace. There, Ursula invited her student to sit down. "You want some tea? Or coffee?" "Don't bother, miss," Octava answered quickly. That's what happened all this time. They were used to refusing pleasantries with pleasantries even though Octava's throat felt parched. Miss Ursula looked at her student from head to toe. Then she shrugged. "I tell you to choose, not refuse. Because no matter what you say, I'll still make coffee. So, would you like me to make a cup for you?" Ursula didn't need to force her. Of course, her guests would drink whatever she served. And yes, Octava immediately nodded. Ursula smiled with satisfaction and immediately unlocked the door of her house and went inside. Miss Ursula's house is not that big compared to the Gorse family's house, let alone the one she lived in when her father was alive. The lecturer's house is small, but the garden dominates. Half of the building consists of an array of crushed bricks and coconut wood. It looks warmer with the yellow lead glow. Around her, the scene seemed darker. Octava glanced at her watch. 7 o'clock at night. At least she and Miss Ursula had 2 hours to discuss before Octava said goodbye and caught the last bus. Maybe next time, she would ask Ursula's permission not to invite her to discuss it too late. Octava wasn't exceptionally comfortable in the middle of nowhere at this hour of the night. "Hey, Talaga. Coffee is waiting upstairs, come in." Ursula's head peeked through the gap in the door. Octava turned and got up from her seat. She automatically bowed when she entered the lecturer's house. "Don't hesitate. It's not campus hours and I'm only human if I'm not on campus. Go up these stairs, and I'll follow behind you." Ursula's usual attitude towards Octava was almost too friendly. It is very different from her rigid attitude when teaching on campus. She was not even as fiery as every oration in front of the class. Ursula invited Octava to sit on the balcony of the second floor of her house. There were 2 cups of coffee, each of which was billowing smoke. Both the same coffee with the same dose. "So, if you want to drink it, go ahead." Octava nodded. She sat stiffly. She put 2 hands on her lap. She wanted to make small talk, but the girl didn't know what was worth discussing with her teacher, who had failed her twice. She also wanted to ask why the lecturer didn't pass her, but Octava thought it was unpleasant. Octava was afraid that Ursula would think her students doubted her judgment ability. After a long silence, Ursula raised her coffee cup. She was looking far ahead of the house. From the second floor, they could see the yellow and white lights of the neighboring village and the rice fields glistening with gradation in the moonlight. One horizontal line, then white dots and clouds. "So, are you curious about the smell of my hair?" asked Ursula suddenly. The coffee cup was still in front of her mouth. Then Ursula sipped the pitch-black liquid before placing it back on the table. Octava turned to her teacher. But she dared not answer. Is this a test? Or did Ursula want to show off her hairstyle? Octava didn't dare decide. She pretended to drink coffee. I want the coffee, miss. Then Octava sipped her coffee. Try it. You won't regret it. Ursula took a few strands of her longest dreadlocks and thrust them in front of Octava. And Octava couldn't help but put down the cup. She grabbed Ursula's strand of hair and prayerfully brought it close to her nose. The soft but thick vanilla scent pierced the girl's nose. Now she knew where the vanilla smell came from, which had always haunted Ursula's wind trail. Smell of vanilla, Octava muttered. She smiled when Ursula looked at her with a smile. The lecturer seemed very proud. The treatment is more annoying than how I teach in class, she joked, then threw the heavy dangling behind her back. Isn't it hard to wear a wig every day, miss? Octava asked her teacher. Ursula shook her head. At first. But not as heavy as this burden of my life. Ha ha ha, she joked to herself and laughed to herself. Octava wasn't provoked because there were still questions that escaped her mouth. How long has Miss Ursula kept this hairstyle? Ursula remembered. Maybe 8 years. Or 5 years? I've forgotten. Why? Are you interested in having this hairstyle? Why did you choose this hairstyle? Aren't you afraid that the school will find out? What made you decide to have this hairstyle? Ursula squinted and noticed Octava's eyes were twinkling with curiosity. Before answering, Ursula moistened her lips. Why are you wearing that dress? If I asked you to change those clothes with mine, would you like it? Ursula asked her students. Octava shook her head. Our tastes are a bit different. And your size must be smaller than mine. That's it. But, how do you know if my chest size is smaller than yours? Ursula asked a little loudly, so Octava turned red. Relax, I'm joking. Octava breathed a sigh of relief. If the school finds out, it's fine, I surrender. The important thing is that they didn't tell me to cut it. So, what's your last question? Ursula leaned forward so that the white shirt she was wearing was slightly open. Octava accidentally looked into it. And this reminded her of the Helena incident this afternoon. Talaga. Yes? Octava was a bit panicked when Ursula called her last name. How long has she been daydreaming? She doesn't know what made her drool. What's your last question? Ursula repeated. Octava shook her head because she had forgotten her spontaneous question earlier. I forgot. Next time I remember I'll ask again, miss. Okay. Then the atmosphere became quiet again. Ursula fell silent again. Likewise, with Octava. So, miss. Ursula. Just call me Ursula. Don't wear miss. It seems that we are far apart. How old are you? 22, miss. Ursula. Octava stammered. It's a long way, 10 years. Ursula smiled widely. Well. Octavia sighed. What are we going to discuss today, Ursula? Ursula turned to her student. Shrug. Then look forward again. First meeting, you better explain why they gave you such a pretty name? Asked Ursula softly. However, Octava knew that her teacher wasn't asking out of curiosity. I'm not sure, my father is gone, replied Octava blandly. Ursula immediately felt awkward. Then I'm sorry, I was just curious because your name is really nice. It must have been very hard when your late father put it together. He must really love you, Talaga. Yes, he loved me so much that he never spoke to me. Other than when he showered Octava with money. Octava then threw her thoughts away and faced Ursula again. "It's okay. Is there anything we can discuss?" Octava felt impatient for a moment. "Drink your coffee first. I left my cell phone downstairs. I have to pick it up and I'll be right back." Ursula got up from her seat and disappeared behind Octava. "Shit, I got tricked," Octava grumbled. While grumbling inwardly, Octava got up from her seat, went into the house and looked for Ursula. The girl waited for an hour, the coffee had run out, and Ursula had not returned. Meanwhile, Helena sat in her room with the phone to her ear. "They are getting married this Saturday. Can't you come?" "Yes, my mother will also come," said Helena. She massaged the back of her neck while listening to her interlocutor. "How long are we going to hide like this, Ursula? My mom wouldn't care if I dated anyone. I'm almost certain that she actually knew about our relationship." Elsewhere, Ursula scratched her head restlessly. "Honey, I know that if your mother didn't care, Rebecca wouldn't care." But standing near the kitchen table, Ursula saw Octava coming down from upstairs. Geez. She forgot that there was a student here. Ursula immediately ended the call. "I have to go now. Tonight, stay here at my house." To make us easier to talk, Octava was standing in front of Ursula now. "Yeah, we'll do that. I miss you too. See you later." Ursula then turned off her cell phone. "I'm going home, miss." Octava said goodbye. "Fine, I'll take you home. Sorry, I received the call earlier." "I forgot." Ursula took the key from her trouser pocket. "No need, someone has already picked me up, thank you. Goodbye." Octava, whose feelings were mixed and already in the crown, walked out without looking back. She can't be sweet now, not after she had just seen. "Seriously, has someone picked you up?" Ursula narrowed her eyes. "Are you all right, Talaga?" Yes. I am fine." Octava grabbed her bag and stepped out of the way for the front door. Microscopic Lust. Chapter 5. Unfortunately, the lamps for street lighting around Ursula's house could not give Octava a clear enough memory. The girl walked fast, turning every corner, praying silently, so that she does not get lost, so that there are no bad people, and so that what she had just seen at Ursula's house would not haunt her anymore. The lecturer's house does look friendly from the outside. The lighting is attractive. The solid wood provides a safe atmosphere. The glow of the lights makes you feel at home. However, Octava may have guessed wrong about her lecturer. Curiosity immediately overtook Octava. When she presumptuously got up from the balcony above to look for Ursula, who had neglected her for over an hour without a clear message, Octava accidentally peeked into the only room upstairs. Indeed, at that time, the door was not completely closed. As if possessed by the ghost of Nancy Drew, Octava peered into it. Mannequin. The room was full of mannequins, not all naked, but the clothes that made her shiver. She thought that maybe Ursula had another business outside her main job as a lecturer. She was selling clothes, for example. Costumes maybe, to be more precise. Or, either, a mannequin was wearing a security guard costume. One is wearing lingerie and a swimsuit, and the other is like a nurse, complete with a wig covering the head. The colors are varied, and the models are extraordinary. Some are shoulder-length straight. Some are curly with tangled threads. Some are waist-length curls. There is something similar to Beyoncé's hairstyle, the famous singer. The strange thing is that the masks of various faces are lined up neatly on one side of the wall. Everything is laid out very neatly there. In the middle of the room was a king-size bed. The sheets are blood red. Did the teacher sleep with such a scary sight? Indeed, Octava had slapped herself so that his curiosity wouldn't anesthetize her right then and there. But she couldn't stop her sassy legs. She found herself in the room in less than 2 seconds, rummaging through drawers and cupboards. Then the weird stuff. It was the first time the girl had seen such a complete and extensive collection of adult toys. There are long, short, large and small. There is a small long, large long. There are big short, tiny shorts. Some are an inch, some are longer, and some are shorter. Some are jagged, some are plain, some are hyperrealistic, circumcised and non-circumcised. Anyway, a lot. Not only that, in another drawer, Octava found additional equipment. There are handcuffs and horse whips, some are made of leather, and some are made of rope with a chicken feather. There are balls. There are neckband. Show can Octava be sure which one works for what? Is this a collection or a shop? Knowing that her lecturer might have a disorder or deviation, Octava immediately got out of there as soon as possible. And here she is now. Running away isn't a good idea either. But she needed the value from Ursula. And tomorrow, she must return to the house again. Can Octava pretend to be stupid and know nothing? Can she put on a straight face like a poker card player? But Ursula didn't bother her or seduce her. Ursula didn't try to take advantage of Octava. Maybe Ursula knew what she was doing, and Octava should stop caring about other people's private lives. Now, the girl had to focus on the darkness of the night that was terrorizing her. Now, in front of her, sweat made her shirt stick to the skin on her back. A strange feeling ran up the back of her neck in a hurry. In front of her was a fork that she did not recognize. Oh, God! She's lost now. Octava cursed herself. She shouldn't have gone in there to that room. Besides, Ursula didn't hurt her at all. Maybe the call was so important that the professor didn't realize she had left the student on her balcony for an hour without notice. Next time, Octava wouldn't refuse Ursula's offer to take her home. Because it's not only ghosts that she's afraid of, but sometimes humans can be more terrifying than any demon. The atmosphere around her grew darker and darker. Octava saw 2 light bulbs swerving short from the end of the road to her left from afar. She prayed this wasn't a scene from a Riverdale movie. Or another thriller series. The car was approaching, slowing down. Then stopped right in front of the girl. Slowly, and indeed, the glass door opened smoothly. Octava. Call a girl from the dark pit of the car. Octava, confused, lowered her head, squinting to adjust to the darkness inside. At that moment, Helena turned on the interior light. What are you doing here? This late? Come on in. Octava fumbled for the car door and then got into it once it opened. Where are you going? Helena asked her future half-sister. I want to go home. To your father's house. Octava answered shyly. The events of the day before repeated in her head. She was afraid of Helena. Helena this afternoon. Because Helena is now trying to save her from fear. Helena turned the wheel to the right without answering again, then turned. Back down the road, she just walked back to the Gore's house. The sweat that had been wet had evaporated. Leaves a comfortable cooling sensation all over Octava's body. Thank you, Octava said as she rubbed her cold neck with the palm of her hand. Next time, you can borrow my father's car. She won't mind. Getting lost while you're in the car is safer than walking. You don't seem to know much about this area. Helena didn't look up at all. Her eyes were so alert to her surroundings. One more turn, Octava saw the same bus stop as Ursula picked her up. Helena glanced briefly at the bus stop. Last bus at 8 o'clock. Even if you got there, you wouldn't find a bus that was hanging around. You'll sleep all night there. Octava nodded. I still had time to ask myself, how could Helena be on the same road as Octava last night? But of course, that's none of her business. Am I interfering with your business? Asked Octava innocently. But Helena could hear regret there. Unexpected indeed. But no big deal. I can come back now. Well, we've arrived home. Helena pulled the handbrake. She turned to Octava. Thank you. Octava feels bad. She also did not want to make small talk for too long. She immediately opened the car door and got out. Hey, Helena called out. Octava returned to her original sitting position. Remember what I told you earlier? You're not coming in? Octava had thought that Helena would come home with her. Helena shook her head. Just say hello to your mother and the old gorse. It was strange to hear such a joke uttered in an even tone like Helena's. Octava smirked. Helena kissed her right cheek. The smell of chewing gum filled Octava's head again. Okay. Come out now. Helena smiled. And Octava got out of the car with a red face.